Hello, Jessica. Welcome to the Champions for HD podcast. We are so excited to have you. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We had some technical difficulties, but we came back pretty strong.
Yeah.
Okay, so remind me where you and everyone who's listening, where you're joining us from, because you are in the US. Our last visitor was all the way from Ireland.
Right. I am from Florida, so I live like right outside of Tampa. So
You guys are open right now, aren't you?
yeah, we are slowly opening. We have like the food places are starting to open with like a certain amount of capacity, and the theme parks are starting to open again, and the beaches are open. So yeah, we're finally getting back to normal, kind of.
That's great for you guys. We're in the opposite because we're all the way up north in the Midwest in Michigan, and I think we're one of the top states for how strict our state is handling this right now, for better or for worse. So we actually got extended through the middle of June now. So June 12th, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets extended again. But wow, that's so crazy. So before you were able to go out and do things normally again, how are you keeping yourself busy and sane during these times? Because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I just went for walks. I went for like around the neighborhood, and just to get out of the house, because I was going to go crazy if I just sat in there for any longer. And then I did a little bit of cooking. That's what I did a lot of my time on.
What's your favorite thing to cook?
I like to bake. I don't really like cooking dinner.
Yes.
Like muffins or cookies or
yes. That's my favorite too. I don't like to cook. If I had extra money, I would pay for a service to subscribe to and to have it brought to us. Oh my goodness. Well, that's awesome that you're keeping yourself busy. I just want my gym to be open, to be quite honest with you. I'm trying to get used to the at-home workouts, and you just have to go with the flow. But like you said, I have to actually step out and either take my dumbbells on our patio or go for a walk, because I'm like an introverted extrovert, if that makes any sense. I love socializing with people. Yeah. I love gatherings. I love going out, but there are certain times where I'm just like, I need my own space. I don't want to see anybody. My boyfriend will go shut himself in his room. I need my own space. So I thought I would be kind of okay with this, but it's starting to get to be a little bit stressful.
Yeah, I get that, because I'm kind of the same way. I like my personal space, but I like to get out.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I don't think that's that weird of a thing. No, anyone listening, let us know if you are also an introverted extrovert. Maybe we're not the only ones.
We're probably not.
So for anyone listening, with our connection, like most people in the HD community, I haven't met you face to face. This is the first time that we're virtually seeing each other face to face, and it feels really nice for the first of all, because I have made so many friends and connections just through Facebook and these support groups, and it's been really nice to have since being diagnosed and thereon after every factor of life and with HD. So first, before I get into our questions, for anyone new who maybe stumbled upon this podcast, hello. HD is Huntington's disease, and I have to say that because everyone who's not in the HD community goes, "Do you mean like a flat screen TV? You have HD?" I'm like, no. HD is our acronym for Huntington's disease, which you and I both know is a neurological genetic disorder that is similar to having ALS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's simultaneously. And since it's genetic, if your parent has it, you have a 50-50% chance of inheriting this scary disease. And there hasn't been a lot of knowledge about it, or even, the gene wasn't even developed, the test, until the 90s. So all of this has been within the past few decades, and it's been really incredible to see how far we've come. But as we get into our story, you and I both have a very personal connection, and we want a cure ultimately.
Absolutely.
So what was your childhood like? And did you know about HD early on, or was it something that you just came into later on in life?
So yeah, I know that with you didn't know about HD for a while, but I knew HD all my life. I don't know a life without HD. When I was born, my grandmother was diagnosed with HD about the same year, I believe. So it was like 1993. So they didn't really know a whole lot back then about it. especially like right now. So her mother had it. So my great grandmother had it, and she was my grandmother was misdiagnosed a few times. But when she finally got diagnosed with it, she started declining. So all of my years with my grandmother, was just her declining, not being able to speak properly, not being able to change herself, not being able to eat properly. So, I grew up with that. And then also knowing that my mom was at risk and several other people in the family.
Wow, that's complete. Yeah. It's so interesting to hear how everyone comes into HD because like you said, I did not know it for the vast majority of my life. And some people, like you said, have never known life without HD. And the misdiagnosis seems to be something that's very common, or at least it was more common before they had the gene test developed.
Right.
But my great-grandmother also, before she passed away, was misdiagnosed originally with schizophrenia. And then when my grandfather got diagnosed with HD, they realized that that was not what she had. But my sister, with her JHD, the juvenile form of Huntington's, they misdiagnosed her a lot. I mean, I think that we thought she had 6 different diseases. She was on different crazy fad diets. She couldn't eat certain things and only a certain amount of calories or fat. And nothing was working. And it wasn't until we had that family tree lineage that they would even think about testing her, because that was not even in the negotiation at that point. So how did your life change when you realized that you were at risk for it?
I don't think it actually hit me hard that I was at risk for it until my mother was officially diagnosed. I've kind of always known that I was at risk because my grandmother had it. I think I was more worried that my mom was going to get it. So once she got her official diagnosis, I remember just sitting in the car. I was in college at the time, and I was sitting in the car, and she lived in Florida, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is real. So that was when I think it first hit me. And ever since then, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get tested. But I wasn't sure when I was going to get tested because, all of the financial things and other things in life that I wanted to get straight first.
So when it comes to testing, because I tell my story and I feel like I am an oddball, absolutely. But for me, when I knew I was at risk and HD was brand new in our life, I didn't even sit to think about whether or not I wanted to be tested. And it is a huge decision. I always tell people, don't go off of me. Don't go off of the next person. Listen to everyone's experiences, but do it how your gut feels is right. If you want to sit on it for a year or never do it, or if you want to jump on it and just go all the way in, I say do what your gut's telling you, because you have to live with either knowing or not knowing it. So for me, I wanted to know right away because I knew that I could be involved in testing and different clinical trials that were going on. And I also wanted to plan my life accordingly, with children and how I wanted to go about that. So when your mom was diagnosed, did you have any hesitation before you got tested?
No. I waited a couple of years after she got tested, but no, I didn't hesitate to be tested. Like you said, that I just kind of knew that I was going to get tested. Once I got all the financial things straightened out, that's when I actually did get tested. Sorry.
You're good.
So after the financial things that got figured out, then I got tested, and I don't regret being tested at all. I just kind of regret the timing. So I think if anyone is listening, I would make sure that my life, as far as emotionally goes first, make sure you're like emotionally ready to hear those results, that you're not having to deal with anything else, because I think that's really important to be, mentally prepared for that. I think that's my only regret.
That is a huge and incredible piece of advice.
Yeah.
I don't know how your testing process worked, and I would love to hear you break it down. But I know when I did it, that was a factor, and it was counseling. And when I went to the therapist, I still remember her asking me, because I had to go back. I went initially after I said I wanted to be tested, because they test your mental health and see if they think that they would recommend you to be tested. And then I did all these in between with the neurologist and the genetic counselor, the blood draw, and then I came back, and I remember she looked at me and she was like, "Are you sure this is the right time in your life to be tested, because I was going through a really horrible breakup with my first really serious relationship. I was living out of state in Tennessee, so that was an 8-hour drive from Michigan, 500 miles. And I just wasn't really in a good place at all. And my mom made a deal with me. She said, I'm going to support you no matter what, but I would really appreciate it if you would wait until you came home from Nashville. So I actually started in summer of 2016, but didn't get my results until May of 2017.
Okay.
And wanted my mental health to be in a better place. But also she just wanted me to be around my friends and family so that when that diagnosis came, because positive, negative, or gray area, which that's a whole nother conversation, is the gray area. It's life-changing, and it's going to hurt no matter what, because either you're going to go, I have it, how do I cope with this? Or I'm negative, but my mom has it, or my sister has it, or my brother, or my aunt, my uncle. Why didn't I get it? And then there's that guilty, thing in your head that just lingers of why me? So I waited, and I told her, I don't think that there would ever be a good time in my life for me to find out that I have a life-threatening disease that is ultimately going to deteriorate me in some form. And that was when I knew that I just needed to get my results. So what was the testing process like? Did you go through it in Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually like 10 minutes down the road from me. So
perfect.
Yeah. So I called, it actually happened so fast. So when I decided I was going to do it, I emailed the HD Center of Excellence that's right down the road from me. And they put me in contact with the social worker. And they said that she would contact me within a couple of days. And she contacted me the next day. And after that, everything seemed to just kind of fly by. When she called me, we talked on the phone a little bit about my, history with HD and my family and, my reasons for being tested. And she just wanted to make sure that I was mentally there. And like you said, I was also going through a breakup at the time and a lot of other things. Yeah.
What is it with
other things that was going on too? I also had, I work in retail, so it was like around the holidays. So she was worried about that and was, didn't want me to be tested around the holidays and get that negative result and let it impact me negatively. So when I decided to be tested, we got our first appointment, and that was in November of 2018. And so when we went, it was 2 different appointments. And my first appointment was with the social worker and the neurologist. And, they did the motor exam and the cognitive exams. And then I met with a social worker, and that's when we talked pretty privately about, my feelings, like you said, with other family members. What about my siblings? What about, future relationships, kids, careers. And so after that, we decided to do the test. I decided to do the blood draw, and then I went downstairs and did that. And after that, I waited a few weeks, and my results came in January. Well, I guess it was a month or so, but they came in January after the holidays, and that is when they gave me my result, and it came out as positive. So very similar but different.
Yeah. I'm just trying to process, because I feel like I'm reliving it while I'm talking to you, because those emotions and those circumstances were very real. And I still feel like you'll probably agree. It could probably be, for me, it's been 3 years since I was diagnosed, but it could be 10, 15, 20, and it would still feel like it was yesterday, just because of how emotionally and even physically, just because of you have to go through, physical exams when you're there, but also just the stress psychologically made my body freak out.
Yeah,
and
it was so draining.
Absolutely. And I still remember the worst part for me was that wait period that I'd promised my mother I would do, because even though I think in the long run it was better for me to get it, I got it the day after I came home from my sophomore year of college. I called my genetic counselor and I said, hey, I know that we're scheduled for 2 weeks out. I just had a breakdown. I literally had a break I was working a retail job at the Grand Ole Opry in the gift shop. So they had these huge acts in country music that would come sing. And I was working in the gift shop, and I had a break. And I remember I went in the corner. I walked outside to eat my food, and I bawled, because HD was so new and I still thought that everything I did, I was like, well, my dad would do, he'd forget his glasses or start talking and forget what he said or repeat himself or have these weird jitters. And so I would overthink it and psych myself out. So I just cried. I walked into a corner and I cried and I called my best friend, my best childhood friend. I left her a voicemail and then I called my genetic counselor at like 10 o'clock at night. And I said, I know that we have a date, but if there's any way that you could move it up, I really mentally need that. And this woman, if anyone's listening in the Michigan area, her name's Kathleen Delp. She is an angel. She's been doing this for about 20, 30 years. And she's like a second mom to me. She called me back the next day when she got into the office and she said, what day are you coming home? And got me in the next day. So it's so emotionally and physically draining, but it's definitely worth it if it's something that you feel like in your gut you want to know.
Yeah.
And you said that you have siblings. Explain how many siblings do you have? How old are they? What's their stance on all this? Because my siblings have very different ages and gaps and perspectives. So I'm just curious. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I only have one sibling. So he is 19. No, he's 20. At the time he was 19. But I'm not really sure on his viewpoint. We don't really talk about it too much. It's kind of hush-hush between us. He knows that I was tested, but it took me a long time to actually tell him my results. I probably waited, it's probably 3-4 months before I told him that I was positive. And he didn't even know that I was going to be tested. So he lived out of state, and I remember all of my family had already knew, and I finally decided, I was like, okay, I need to let him know. It was just a lot of emotions to tell your baby brother, okay, well, I have this disease that our mom passed away from and our grandmother and all of these other people that he saw suffered from it. So it was just so emotional to even just tell him. So it was hard.
It is really hard. Did you have an emotional support person there, aka a friend, family, loved one?
Yeah. You're talking about at the testing process?
Yep.
Yes. They don't let you do it where I went without one. I think that's the case in many places. I'm not really sure.
Maybe it was. I mean, maybe you're right. I just remember they asked me if I had someone, and obviously my mom was like, well, I'm going to be there. So I didn't really think of it as required, but it probably is.
Yeah, they told me I was not allowed to do it without a support person being there. And I remember on my testing day, it was my cousin that came with me, and we went in, and as we were walking in, we stood there and in front of the door, and we just prayed, and just prayed for the results. And then we got in, and all of my emotions are coming back right now.
I know. I'm starting to get goosebumps.
Yeah, I remember they sat when we got into the room on the testing day, or the results day. The doctor was in there, and he put the paper down on the table in front of me, and all of a sudden I saw the result before he even said it. And I remember just looking at it, and everything in the room just stopped. And I remember him talking about all of these positive things and what was going on in the HD community right now, and I couldn't tell you what he said because all I could think about was, okay, well, I have it. So
oh my gosh, it feels like I'm reliving my own testing experience because the only difference is, and this probably really doesn't matter, but I have noticed on a side note, when I went to the national convention for HCSA last year, it was my first time going. And a lot of people who had taken the decision to test like you and I were talking about how they received their results. And there were a couple people I interacted with who said that they did it in like a black market kind of way where either they chose to do it or someone in their family forced them to do it. And like basically you just take the blood draw and get the result. There's no therapy, there's no coping, there's no resources, which they all regretted. Right. But there were some people who've gone through the same process you and I have gone through, and they still had different experiences with how they received their results. So for me, it was my genetic counselor who I went to at the beginning, the middle, and the end. She was the person who I walked in and she showed me the piece of paper. So for you, was it your genetic counselor or one of the neurologists?
Well, both of them was in there.
Okay.
So it was the social worker, and I guess she was the genetic counselor as well. And then it was the neurologist as well. So they both were in the room with me along with my support person. So I was in a room full of people and I just felt so alone at the time.
It's crazy how you can be surrounded by so many people and know that they have amazing intentions and amazing hearts, but you still feel so alone. Because when you said, I got that piece of paper and I don't remember what they said to me, and the whole room just kind of spun. That's exactly how I felt. I just remember I had these gut feelings, and I heard you say that you and your cousin were praying. So I know that you are a faithful, spiritual person as well. So when I say gut feelings, I'm, basically saying God feelings.
Yes.
I had these God feelings the entire 9 months that I waited to get tested when I was in school. And my roommate at the time of my sophomore year, we're still very close. She has her own really rare disease. I'm going to totally botch it if I try and say it. I think the acronym is EDS. So it's like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Okay.
She was misdiagnosed so many times. They thought she had leukemia. They thought that she had lupus because she would, we'd wake up in the middle of the night and she needed to go to the hospital. She had all these bruises and it was just insane that she was going through all this. And so I felt bad even bringing up being stressed about being diagnosed, because I was like, well, what if I don't have it? Or even if I do, I'm not sick with it right now. And this woman is like trying to go to school to be a teacher and kicking butt at it and still trying to survive this disease that also doesn't have a cure. So I remember I told her one time, I said, I think I have it. She's like, what do you mean, Shelby? And I was like, I just have this feeling that I have it. And I don't know how I feel about that. But someone, AKA God, is telling me I have it, so that when I go walk into that room, I will be prepared. Or as prepared as you can be. One can be.
Yeah.
You think you're prepared, and then you walk in and you just like gut punch. And I kept saying that all the way up until I got tested and diagnosed. And even my family was like, Shelby, you're just overthinking it. Like you'll be fine. And again, no one knows what your disease is except for the people who are drawing your blood. And when I walked in the room, I kind of felt the demeanor switch with my genetic counselor. She's very bubbly, like, really fun and energetic. And I just felt like she was trying so hard to have a poker face. But with that, I had this sense of peace because God had been telling me for almost a year, you have it. I have a plan, stick with it. It's not going to make sense right now. And you're still going to grieve and you're still going to hurt, but that's all a part of the process. So she pulls out the piece of paper and she doesn't even know what to say. And I think it's because they get close to you, they become like family and they really want the best for you. That's why they have those jobs, is because they want to make an impact in the community. And she said, you have it. And she put the piece of paper down. Again, I don't remember anything else she said except for your number is 49. And for anyone who's not familiar with the testing process or unfamiliar with HD, she explained it to me as this. There's a white area, a black area, and a gray area. And someone with a normal, we all have the HD on our DNA, but only those of us who have the excessive amount of repeats will experience the disease and the symptoms. So when I got tested, they took saw my mom's DNA, and her repeats were 16, which are really normal, average. My dad, who has Huntington's, is a 44. I always mix up him and my grandpa. I believe he's a 44. My grandpa's a 42. So anyone, I believe it's 39 and up, is HD gene positive.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know the exact numbers for the gray area and the white area, but the white area is like you don't have it. You have a normal repeat like my mom. And then there's that gray area, which you probably won't have the disease, but you could still pass it to your children, which is terrifying. She told me when I walked in there, you have such, I guess that it can expand as many times as it pleases, but it can only retract a certain amount of numbers. So she basically told me there was no scientific way that I would be in the gray area. I'd either be clear of it or I would have it. And sure enough, mine was 49, which was 7 higher than my grandpa, 5 higher than my dad. Yours is 47, right?
It's 48. Yeah.
48. Oh, so we're one off. I thought we were pretty dang close.
Yeah, we are.
So this is going to get me all emotional. How has it been for you knowing that you have this disease and having watched it take so much from your mother and ultimately take her life. Because I think what I'm really battling with right now after losing my sister a month ago is you repress it. I repressed my diagnosis for like 6 months. I didn't cry until 6 months later. Same. And I felt like I'm very optimistic, but there are times like, full transparency, a couple nights ago, I had one of those nights where it just hit me that she was gone and that I had this, and I cried and I just prayed and I said, Lord, please give me guidance, please give me a sign, please free me and everyone else of this disease. Like, we need a cure. Yeah. And I just laid there with tears coming down my face, and it didn't hit me fully until she passed that, like, and granted, Brianna had juvenile Huntington's, which is much more aggressive than the adult version. But how are you processing all of this?
Yeah, it's been rough, not going to lie, but I will say, before I say anything else, I do not regret my decision of being tested. But it's been hard, on your mental health. It takes a toll on it. For the longest time, I was trying to repress it, like you said, and I didn't cry for a long time. I had a couple of tears that I shed, the day that I found out, but I didn't actually process it till I broke down in my car one day, and I was like, all right, you can either feel sorry for yourself, or you can just pick yourself up and take this one day at a time and, surround yourself with as much positivity that you can and do everything that you can to make this situation better. I know there's not a cure, but there's trials, like you said, and that's what gives me hope. And I know it's the same thing for you as well. We've talked about it several times. But that's what keeps me going at the end of the day.
Oh my gosh. You're incredible. I say this from the bottom of my heart because I know how difficult it is it's difficult for anyone in the family, because I always try to stress that when I'm talking to anyone in the HD community, but especially people who are new and learning or just want to be aware, that everyone makes a difference in HD and everyone has a role to play. Being a caregiver is a really freaking hard job, and it is a full-time job. It takes a toll on your mental health, and I have so much respect for caregivers. Being a sibling or a loved one and knowing that whether it's your mom, your dad, your sibling is positive, or watching them go through it, everyone has a role to play, and everyone processes grief and trauma differently.
Right.
But there's just this whole nother added stress when you know you have it, when you know that let's be honest, with HD, there's not a lot that we know. We know what causes it, but I think what really strains my mental health, I guess I should say, is with our repeats. I've noticed that a lot of times when people talk about HD, whether it's people in the community or even doctors, they'll say, well, typically, or they don't even preface it with typically, they just say, well, if you have this CAG, you're going to get sick by this age. Or my dad passed away at this age with this CAG. And then it gets printed in my brain, oh my gosh, I'm only going to live till 30. And then I have this additional stress that, well, what am I doing every day to make every day count? How am I keeping myself healthy? How am I keeping myself accountable on my goals? The only positive thing is it does give me this new appreciation for life, and keeping in mind that you always want to be mindful of your loved ones and to let them know how much they mean to you and that you love them. Because the one blessing with this disease is not only that we have the community to support the family, but the HD's in the family. And when we were trying to process Brianna passing, we kept saying we knew from the time she was diagnosed that we wouldn't have many years with her. So we made these years amazing. We kept thinking about, well, what about families who maybe look great on the outside, but maybe they have strained relationships. Maybe the mother, father, daughter, son, maybe they're not that close. Maybe one day one of them gets in a car, or they, get on a bicycle, or they just don't wake up, or they get in an accident. And they didn't have that time to really appreciate and make the memories, because human nature is we don't want to talk about death. We don't want to think that we kind of think we're immortal until something hits us and we go, oh my gosh, I don't have forever. So for us, we have that understanding and we're able to really make the most of our time with ourselves and our goals, but also our loved ones. But I just really struggle with trying to separate. I'm Shelby. I have a CAG of 49. However, that does not directly correlate with how my life will play out. Because I put up this post, I think I put up like a rant in November or something, and I was like, listen, I am having a crap day. I can't stop thinking about my progression because right now I don't have any symptoms. I battle with mental health, but I still never forget this HD doctor one time said, yes, obviously with HD, it's much harder to keep your mental health intact because your brain is deteriorating, obviously.
Oh, goodness.
He said, if you have HD and you're gene positive and all you are dealing with right now is your mental health, a lot of people nationwide, globally, battle with mental health. He said, you're not abnormal. So don't let that think that your symptoms have necessarily started yet. But where was I going with this? See, I knew it was going to happen to me. Oh, here's what I remember. Okay. So I put up this post and I just said, I'm really struggling and I don't know what this means, because when you get diagnosed, they say like, there's a lot of hope, but we can't tell you how sick you're going to get, when you're going to get sick. And I did get a comment from someone who said, hey, my mom, I think it was mom or dad, one of their parents had HD, same CAG. She's in her mid-50s and really has no symptoms, living her best life. And there was another gentleman who commented on my post, and he said, and this was actually, I think, a month ago, at the beginning of May for HD Awareness Month. And I put up this long post saying, HD can't tame me, which you put up a post for. If anyone wants to see Jessica's post, it's on our Champions for HD account. But he commented on it and he said, I'm praying for you. I have a similar CAG. I'm in my, I think he said again, like 50s. And he said, I am not symptomatic. I am running. I am surfing. And, so it's easy to get caught into those dark thoughts. But for me, I really have to focus on seeing the light and the positivity, which is why I'm so excited that I get to speak with people like you on this podcast, because you guys reel me back in and say, okay, exactly like you said, are you going to be a victim? Because it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be down. You can be a champion and overcome while still grieving and still crying and processing. Absolutely. But it's saying, okay, I've let myself have my moment. Now what am I going to do? Yeah. And that's why everything, yes, exactly. And that's why everything's centered around Rocky Balboa in our world, Champions for HD, because that's exactly what he says. It's not about how hard you can hit, but about how many times you can get hit real freaking hard and keep getting up and keep fighting. So it's just, do you have anything that keeps your mental health somewhat intact that you just, like when you get reeled into these dark places, you go, okay, Jessica, I'm on a beach. Or, okay, Jessica, we're going to go for a walk. Okay, Jessica, we're going to go have some ice cream because I sometimes
I love ice cream. Yeah, I just kind of drown myself with other things. I think if I just keep busy, whether it's work or whether it's going to the beach, like you said, or going for a walk, it really helps me mentally to just like take that moment away, because I think about HD all the time. But once I start doing something that is not HD related, I'm able to like kind of drown my thoughts away for a little while.
I love that. You remind me so much of myself. So I am just so inspired by you and your ability to continue to bounce back. And I know that there's probably so many people who are listening to this who are just feeling so chilled by your words and your strength. And there might be someone out there who's listening to this thinking, I am going through a similar story, because you and I have a similar story, but there's so many other people who also have a similar story to us that maybe we haven't connected with. If you want to connect with us, we would love to talk with you. But I really think it's important that if people are open to sharing their stories like you and I, it's not for everyone. And I have to tell people that, everyone processes trauma differently. Some people opening up is absolutely terrifying. But for some people like you and I, opening up is how I heal. If I talk it out, it's not all congested in my brain, and I go, okay, now we've made sense of it. We're going to let it float in the air, and I'm just going to let it be like a distant cloud next to me, not clouding my brain, but the cloud next to me.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so important that we continue to share and we continue to fight, because the more we talk, not only is it good for our community and our mental health, but it's good to get awareness out there. Because I mean, I keep thinking of things like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. I didn't know, this was like pre-HD for me. I didn't know what ALS was until that challenge.
Yeah,
and
me either.
I was intrigued. See, exactly, it worked. And then when I got diagnosed and it came into my family, I said, oh, you know, because they always say ALS plus Parkinson's plus Alzheimer's. And I said, oh, I know what that is. I understand. That's terrifying that that's part of our disease, but I understand what it is. So even if we're just bringing awareness to people, helping them get an understanding, or helping someone who's maybe in the same shoes that you and I are in, I think it's so beautiful and so important. Do you have any last words of advice that you would give someone listening to this, or how they can hang on to their faith, their hope?
Yeah, I think my only advice to them would be, you know, follow your heart, like you've already said. You can't jump into something just because, you know, I did it, or because you did it, or someone else you know did it. It's got to be something that you really want for yourself. And if you really just feel in your heart that that's what you want to know, then I mean, I'm all for getting tested. You just have to make sure that you're in that right spot. And like you said, you know, there's not going to be a right time, but maybe there is a better time for some people. So don't do it while you're going through a breakup or something.
No, Jessica and I will both tell you that's not ideal.
No, not a good idea. But yeah, and then just keep positive even throughout it, and just surround yourself with loved ones and friends that can just listen to you. You know, even if it's not friends that you can see every day, you know, support groups that helped so much during my healing process. And, you know, just seeing that other people were going through the same things that I was, that really helped me along. So
absolutely. Well, you have been such an incredible guest. I'm so happy that I was able to have you, and that you were so vulnerable and willing to open up so easily with everyone else that is listening and myself. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that, you know, eventually when things die down, maybe I can come visit Florida.
Yes, we can go to the beach. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.
Thank you. You too.